Hello everyone, wherever you are and whenever you are. So right off the bat, as you can see here up on your screen, this is probably not at all what you were expecting here on this channel, but I do have a confession to make, and that is that second to Esper, second to Blue-White, blue, black, and green, or bug as it is sometimes also known, is one of my favorite color combinations in Magic. Well, favorite theoretical color combinations in Magic, because I will disclose up front that I've never cast the card Tarmogoyf before. So this is going to be a real crash test here. So this list here is almost identical to a list that Andrea Mengucci played on a stream several months ago now. And after my first ever Legacy outing, again, I took a build of Esper Stoneblade, and this time I wanna switch it up a little bit. That deck was fun, but again, I want to exercise some of my other dual lands that I didn't get to play at that first event, and I'm going to be going to SCG Syracuse coming up quickly here in a couple weekends. So I want to play some sort of bug deck, and so I think I'll use this as a starting point. So really, the only change I've made between the main deck and the sideboard is I changed out one Tarmogoyf for one Baleful Strix, and the reasons for doing that are twofold, and maybe someone can let me know, but maybe it's not ever correct to really go below 4 Goyf in a deck like this. But the reason I wanted to do that is because Mengucci was saying that he feels like maybe 3 to 4 Strix would be where he wanted to go. And I actually own 2 Tarmogoyf in paper, so if this is the build I'm going to go with, well, then maybe I only have to buy one of these before the tournament. So not necessarily a budget consideration, but just kind of like don't really feel like spending that much more money to put a deck together, even though Tarmogoyf is kind of probably at an all-time low since it originally exploded in price. But anyway, so this is of course a Legacy deck. We're going to be foregoing Modern. The past couple times I played Modern, it felt a little lackluster. So I might use that as a springboard here to try and get into a little bit of Legacy content. I've been meaning to do it for a little while now, and I think I'm finally going to pull the trigger on that. So I don't know. I can't speak with as much certainty about decks and things like that in Legacy. Again, I've been consuming Legacy content for quite a while, but I've only ever actually played a handful of games, so definitely not professing to be an expert, but yeah, the deck looked kind of interesting, and I've been meaning to take it for a spin. So our mana base is comprised entirely of dual lands and a 4 of Wasteland, so we have no basics to speak of, so we're pretty much dead to a Blood Moon if we don't have anything going on board and we can't float mana for an Abrupt Decay. But we'll see how often that may or may not come up. Playing in our seven cantrips here for Brainstorm, of course, just 3 Ponder. Pair of Fatal Pushes here, take care of some of the creepy crawlies that are out there in the Legacy metagame. A little bit of targeted hand disruption. I would have liked to have played. I considered, because I said I own 2 Goyf. I considered doing 2 Goyf to Hymn to Torok, but I figured, well, it's probably not that easy to cast off of the Noble Hierarch, so I decided to go up 1 Goyf and up 1, or minus 1 Goyf plus 1 Strix instead. So, of course, Snapcaster Mage, because it pairs really well with all of the spells we enjoy casting in a deck like this. Diabolic Edict, because for those of you who aren't as familiar with the Legacy metagame, there's some really obnoxious creatures at sea play that you can't kill with targeted removal. It also provides an out to one of the more common combo decks in the format, where they make a 20/20 indestructible Flying Merit Lage, so there's very few cards that interact with that outside of, at instant speed anyway, outside of Swords to Plowshares, so running a couple of Edicts in here. 1 Sylvan Library for some card advantage and some deck manipulation, so that's always good, especially in the blue matchups, the grindy games like that. Tarmogoyf, of course, just for a beater. Baleful Strix, excellent blocker, plus it digs us a little deeper here. and is also a removal spell when we need one. Abrupt Decay, just kind of as a catch-all here. So Umezawa's Jitte, just because this card is insane. When I went down to the tournament that I did the little report on in the last episode of Ensor's Journal, my buddy built Infect, and so we were kind of playtesting a little bit, and this card is ridiculous and should probably never see the light of day in Modern. Even if it isn't broken, it makes for some really uninteresting creature combat-based games once you get one online. So, but yep, we can. A Strix can kind of pick this up and start going to town. Same with a Noble Hierarch if you're kind of in one of those board stalls. Just a little something to help you push through, and also kind of curtails the aggression in some of the against some of the aggro decks and things like that. True Name Nemesis, because this card is just bonkers and wins games all by itself. So 1 copy of Liliana, Last Hope. 2 Leovold. Now this card here was the card that really made me want to get into the bug colors. I think Leovold's a really cool card, and it's pretty much the kind of thing that in the matchups where it's good, if your opponent can't kind of remove it immediately, it can really almost win the game on its own. So very strong card. We're gonna see what we can do here with that. This league, Para Jace, and of course Force of Will to help keep those degenerate combo decks in check. Quick look at the sideboard, just a little bit of counter magic. We want to stay low to the ground and be able to get underneath some of the decks. Like you can board this in a combo matchup. You might want to board this in the Delver matchup as well. Again, I'm not. Don't crucify me. I'm not an expert on the format. I'm just still learning. But just kind of speaking my thoughts aloud here. So feel free to correct me down in the comments. Help me make better deck building choices and better card considerations in the future. So not that these choices are really mine; they're all Andre Mengucci's. But anyway, moving on. 3 Surgical Extraction for Graveyard Hate of Choice. This is some sort of graveyard interaction is an absolute stone cold necessity in Legacy to help protect you against some of the graveyard-based shenanigans that happen in the format, like Red-Black Reanimator. Also against like lands, it's important to be able to take away their life from the loams, or their punishing fires, things like that. Dread of Night can come in against decks like Death and Taxes, or maybe a deck that's trying to win with Monastery Mentor. Seems effective there. A little bit of additional hand disruption and Thoughtseize and Collective Brutality. Marsh Casualties and Toxic Deluge are sweepers that, again, they nail that pesky True Name Nemesis that we looked at earlier. So once again, I mentioned the Diabolic Edict. This is one of the creatures I kind of had in mind when I said there's some creatures in the format that are very difficult to interact with traditional removal spells. So you play some wacky things like Marsh Casualties in order to get those cards. Life from Loam can come in during some of the grindier matchups, I imagine. Pairs really well with Wasteland. You can kind of waste your opponent out of the game. 1 additional copy of Abrupt Decay, followed by a Maelstrom Pulse, because why kill one thing when you can kill all the things? And a little bit more graveyard hate here. It's a little more specialized or narrow in a way, but I'm sure I'll know it when I see it, when it needs to come in. But all right, so that's the deck, and yeah, we're just gonna jump right in here, and I expect to get totally and thoroughly ranched, but I think it's going to be a good time. I want to try and get some reps in here before the tournament, just so I'm not going in completely cold and unpracticed. But all right, well, that's enough of that, and I will see you in the first game.